part 4 now, and Sheikh Imran Hosein is getting into geopolitics. That's what I love about the Sheikh. He can give a spiritual explanation for what's happening in the world at the moment, and we're on Syria.
Discussion and come here, which is a major discussion. And when we come here, we find that now all that remains after Syria is that Iran is resisting Israel, and Yemen is resisting Israel, and all the rest are in servile submission. This is my analysis from the Quran. The Quran is teaching me, I don't know who is teaching them. The Quran is teaching me that when the Jews and the Christians join together in friendship and alliance, and that is what has happened today in the Zionist movement, and that is what is NATO. And you join NATO and you become a member state of NATO, the Quran says you're no longer a part of this ummah. Tell that to Erdogan, who is not only a member of NATO, but comfortably so, and exploiting Turkish membership in NATO to advance his own agenda. And he pretends to be a leader for the Muslims. Only sheep and cattle would accept Turkish credentials. I reject them.
I mean, Surah Nisa talks about, fighting, Satan's evil forces. And of course, we spoke about Gog and Magog, and there was the reason why I went there to start off with, to understand who happens to be these evil forces, as it were, because on the one end, the history as you've now related it to be, the timeline of events, those are the ones that I share very deeply. I mean, I cannot, in the absence of the fact and the reality, understand the chronology of events other than the way you've put it now. However, you have, this seemingly divisions around who to trust to be the ones that are friends of Muslims and are ones that are in the pursuit of justice. So let's look at, the Emirates. Let's look at the Saudis, the Turks that you've mentioned there. Of course, I'm not talking to the people. I'm talking here about the leadership. Let's look at Egypt. When Mohammed Morsi was deposed and there was a military installation there, or the military was installed, as head of Egypt, there's no real been proper credible elections ever since. Together with a whole host of other countries that I can mention, and when one looks then at the genocide in Gaza since October the 7th, that it was really only just the Ansarullah, the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah, and of course the Iranians that have been in some sort or the other trying to bring support and fight what is the common evil here. And so I want to understand the leadership that we have, and I struggle to call it Muslim leadership, but nonetheless the leadership that is and does exist at the moment. What is your reading about where we are? Because a couple of months ago there was talk about Saudi and Israel normalizing relations more openly than what they already have. So what is Sheikh Imran Hosein's perspective on this idea, dystopian idea of Islamic leadership?
You have brought a number of subjects together in one comment. In order to bring clarity and remove any confusion from the minds of the listening audience, I would appreciate it if you could repeat a question.
Okay. The question is, what is Sheikh Imran Hossein's perspective on Islamic leadership? That to a certain extent there is the scholarly leadership, and then there is the leadership that we expect as the custodians of different lands, Arab lands in particular, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Qatar, the other Emirates, and so on, vis-a-vis Iran, Hezbollah, and Yemen, as it were. What do you read about the current situation between those two?
That's a simple question. Jerusalem lies at the very heart of Akhir Zaman. Resistance of the bogus state of Israel and its oppression lies at the very heart of the end time. And those who are on the right path and should be accepted as leaders would be those who are resisting Israeli oppression, not those who are in submission to Israel, particularly those who have recognized Israel as a state, which is an act of shirk, and who are in diplomatic relations with Israel and also in trade relations with Israel, supplying Israel with oil, and acting like Israel's puppy dogs, like Azerbaijan and Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
They don't qualify for leadership role of an ummah. Rather, it is only Iran. It is only Iran which is showing credibility and honesty and integrity in consistently opposing Israel and resisting Israel.
Mm-hmm.
But Iran is not is a sectarian state. The Shia is a sectarian movement, and as a consequence of being sectarian, there are many significant weaknesses in Iranian eschatology. When I went to Moscow, maybe 13, 12 years ago for the first time, I was invited by the State University of Moscow to lecture. And I met with Professor Alexander Dugin for the first time. And I met with Russian eschatologists. And I found that Iran had preceded me for many years. And Iran had already conveyed to them a version of Islamic eschatology which was wrong.
Mm.
That version of Islamic eschatology told Russia that the most important event, the most important actor in the end time is not Jesus, the Messiah, Nabi Isa alayhi salam. No. He has a secondary status. It is the Mahdi. And they don't call Islamic eschatology by that name. They call it Ilm al-Mahdawiyah. The study of the Mahdi is the eschatology. Okay? And the Iranian eschatology, because it has some defects, I spent 4 hours in Qom, which is the intellectual center of Iranian Shiaism. And I was in the company of 40 Iranian scholars, all of them experts in eschatology. And we spent 4 hours. And I found, to my surprise, that the same pathetic ignorance that we have in the Sunni world on Gog and Magog and on Dajjal is the same thing with the Shia. No difference.
Yeah.
No difference. I had to then re-educate the Russians. And gratefully, the Russians chose to believe in me now than Iran. In February of this year, Russia organized a very, very important conference. 350 people hand-picked by Russia from 130 countries. And I was the only Islamic scholar invited to that conference.
Mm.
And they gave me a very prominent place in that conference, validating my Islamic eschatology. When the conference was over, I was again surprised when I was invited to join a small group, about 15 people, for dinner with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The minister spent 2 hours with us, and all the talk was on politics and economics and BRICS and so on, until I intervened and said, "Minister, can we speak on the Quran and Russia?" And when I was finished...
Which is the book that you're busy
When I was
completing now.
finished, the minister said, "Can you write on the subject?" I then spent a few months writing the Quran and Russia's destiny. What is at the heart of that book is Surah Rum of the Quran. And Rum is mentioned in that surah. And Rum was helped by Allah to defeat the enemy, even though Rum was already accepting the Trinity, even though Rum was already worshipping Jesus as a second person in the Trinity and as the Son of God. Even though that was there, Allah still helped them, and they were victorious. And when they were victorious, the Prophet and the Muslims celebrated their victory. But the Quran spoke about two victories of Rum, Mim Qabl wa Mim Ba'd. And the second victory has not as yet taken place. I asked Alexander Dugin to write the foreword to the book, and he wrote a beautiful foreword. The book is now being printed. And the most important thing he said is that you are correct, Imran. The Rum of the Quran is Russia. And every Russian believes that. So we can trust when we accept Russia as a friend, and when we make an alliance with Russia, we can understand that we are on the right path, because Russia is Rum of the Quran.
And so are you saying that invariably, ultimately, that when we understand that concept and looking at, as you say, Dajjal and the coming of Dajjal, that it all comes down to what role Russia is going to play in all of these various battles that are being fought in different parts of the world?
What Russia is already doing is so important. To us, it is easy now to understand and anticipate what comes ahead of us, because Russia has already demonstrated that it has now become the dominant military power in the world. There is nothing else to explain. Why is it that the United States of America, which is supposed to be the dominant military power in the world, and which has been changing governments helter-skelter all over South and Central America for 200 years now, overthrowing governments whenever they wanted. And now they've reached a standstill. They can bark as much as they want, shout as much as they want, impose 100,000 economic sanctions, but they can't change the government of Venezuela. They've tried every single thing. They could not do it. Why? Answer: because of Russia. That's why. Because Russia has underwritten Venezuela's security. A war on Venezuela will be a war on Russia. That is evidence that that Russia today is the dominant military power in the world. Russia could have intervened with Iran to save Assad. But the price Russia would have paid for that intervention is to deny them victory in Ukraine. And Russia said, no, we're not going to allow this to happen. We prefer to sacrifice Assad. That doesn't matter. But the war in Ukraine has to proceed until victory.
Why do you think it's taking so long?
Russia has wisely chosen to fight that war incrementally rather than with a rash display of nuclear power and riding roughshod over Ukraine in one of you. Russia had the weapons to destroy Ukraine in 1 hour. In 1 hour you could destroy Ukraine. The United States, Putin has said we can destroy the whole of the United States in half an hour. Half an hour, that's what he said. We only need half an hour. They can destroy Britain in probably 10 minutes.
Yeah.
All right? Why have they not done that with Ukraine? Because they are acting wisely rather than stupidly. And they are acting incrementally, slowly. And this is causing agony and frustration in the West.
Yeah.
Because they're seeing a war taking place before the whole world. And they, for the first time, cannot win the war.
The end times, right? What is defined as the end times? Is this the period that we're living in right now? And what role do you believe Russia plays in that?
What is the role of Russia in the end time? It's connected with Gog and Magog. The Gog and Magog in Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran were contained behind a barrier built of blocks of iron and coated with copper, molten copper. But who contained them? Answer, someone who was given the title. That's not his name. His name is not Zulkarnain. Zulkarnain is his title by which he is known. What does Zulkarnain mean and what does it signify? Zulkarnain is someone who possesses two currents. Two currents. What is a current? A current can either mean a horn or it can mean an epoch, a generation, a time. When we use the Quran to determine what is a current, we find that the Quran has never used the word current to mean a horn, and has always used the word current to mean a generation, an epoch, a people. And so we are on solid foundations when we say Zulkarnain is someone who impacts on history twice. We are on solid foundations when we come to that conclusion. But those who have nothing in their head but peanuts can't even follow us. So if it is something which will impact on history twice, and once has already happened in the Quran, there's a second time coming, when Gog and Magog will again be checkmated and be rendered harmless. And that second time is coming now, because when he went to travel in the direction of the setting of the sun, he came to the Black Sea. People who think can recognize it as the Black Sea. Mufassirin of the Quran can recognize it as the Black Sea, but the sheep and the cattle are hopeless. So when he went to the Black Sea, at that position, you saw Zulkarnain showing his power in resisting the oppressor. That is his profile. So when the second current is to come, listen carefully. Power will once again manifest itself in the region of the Black Sea, power resting on the foundations of it, because that's the profile of Gog and Magog. And that has never happened since the revelation of the Quran till now. In 2014, Russia recovered Crimea, and I celebrated, because now that Russia has recovered Crimea, which was Russian in the first place, Russia now commands the whole of the Black Sea. And so I am confident, in my view, that Russia's role in the end time is to contain and checkmate Gog and Magog for the second time.
Like, I would understand Quran for the Muslims, right? And you of course, you're using Quran as a premise for these sorts of arguments.
If I am wrong in explaining Gog and Magog and Zulkarnain, then will they kindly tell us what is right, put it down in writing so that the whole world can read it and laugh? That's their scholarship. This is mine.
And so, on that note, how does Sheikh Imran Hosein want to be remembered? You know, I'm not writing your obituary. I
don't want to be remembered. I am not important. The world can forget me when I die. Makes no difference to me. What is important to me is what is in the truth in the Quran. That must be remembered, and that must be paid. Imran is not important.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for watching. That was Sheikh Imran Hosein. If you like this format of reacting to a video, give me a suggestion in the comments of where do we go next, who could we listen to, and inshallah I will have the Sheikh on this channel again. I would hope we will see him back in the UK soon, inshallah.